This episode of Q Point Podcast is pre-recorded, produced and sponsored by Karina Quirk, broker at Next Home Experience.
Different views.
I know your story.
From different cues.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Karina Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
Q Point.
Joining us now in studio is Maine Republican gubernatorial candidate Owen McCarthy. Welcome back.
I'm excited to be back. It's been a long time.
It has.
It certainly has been.
Since November.
Last year.
Wow.
A lot has happened in the last, 6 months or so?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you've been out there campaigning all over the state. Tell us, what are you hearing?
I'm hearing consistently that people in Maine haven't got better off the last 7 years, and they want change desperately. I'm hearing everyone from businesses saying, I can't operate anymore here because of the electricity costs, to a lady in Island Falls, Maine, who came up to me, which sticks with me every time I think about this, who said, my electricity bill last month was $700 and I'm on fixed income and I got property taxes going up. Like, how can I afford to stay in my home? Like, please bring help immediately. And I'm hearing in the coastal parts of Maine that are ready for change and the rural parts of Maine. And I think that's the most consistent theme. And it's our year to win in 2026 if we can tap into that, because nothing has gotten better the last 7 years.
So tell me a little bit more about your 2040 plan.
In January, since we last met, I released Maine 2040, which is built to lead again, built around three pillars: opportunity, affordability, and discipline in how we run the government. It's 70 pages, it's 130 policies, and I released it because I thought I owed it to the voters, for them to know exactly what I wanted to do, and for them to hold me accountable to it in the future. You can go to page 38 when I'm elected and say, oh, and I thought you said you were going to do this. Why hasn't this get done? So I thought that was really important. 2040 is the year that my sons, Oliver and Theodore, will be in the workforce. So it's really designed around how do we build a long-term strategy and plan for the state, and there's short-term things to get there, obviously. So everyone out there, don't think their relief doesn't come until 2040. And within it, I talk about one of the major things we need to do is create 50,000 foundational jobs in the state, which is jobs that sell things across state borders, that will raise median incomes, that will create prosperity. The first two sections are fix the fundamentals and bet on our strengths. Fundamentals are things like income tax. It has a 10% cut immediately for people that make less than $200,000. It phases out over 8 years. Why this is important now: 8 states have no income tax. It's soon to be 12. Remote work is becoming more and more prevalent. People can live and work anywhere. And if we're not on the map in a competitive way, we're going to continue to lose more and more of our young people and not bring people in. In addition to that, we plan to conform with the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, because we need to make sure that we take care of the working class people of the state. 2 is on the regulation side. We have 135,000 regulations. There's 135,000 small businesses. So that's one for each of you out here. And we need to make it more easy to operate in the state of Maine. For every one rule proposed in my administration, we're going to find 2 to cut. So we're going to make it easier to operate here, make it easier to be here. And then while we do that, in the pursuit of creating 50,000 foundational jobs, we're betting on our strengths. I've identified maritime innovation, so boat building capacity and sensing in the ocean and autonomous drones. Largest concern of the United States from a national security perspective. We've been building boats since the British liked our pine trees back in the day. We're good at it. We have the talent here. We have a reason to win in that market. Also, forest products. We still have 29,000 people that work in the forest products industry in the state of Maine. We need more markets as we sit here today. We need to protect the ones that we have, so we can't remove those dams in central Maine that would knock Sappi out of business. But we also need to make sure when they're opening tissue mills and dissolving pulp mills and molded fiber and nanocellulose, all these things, that it happens here. And we need a governor that is aggressive about recruiting and making sure those businesses are here. There is 70 pages. I'll stop there. We cover every area of government really as a blueprint of what we want to do.
Well, you're an innovator yourself. Tell us about it.
My background started as an engineer in the paper industry. I worked there. And then I became an entrepreneur. I've started 2 companies, one of them in 3D printing of electronics and the other one in medical devices. The medical device one is called MedRhythms. I started actually with a friend from West Enfield, so another rural Maine kid. And we help people improve walking following stroke or living with Parkinson's disease. We took what Brian, my co-founder, was doing in the clinic. So he's trained as a neurologic music therapist, which is one of 2,000 people in the world trained it like that. He uses how rhythm helps people walk better. But you couldn't get Brian's outside of top hospitals. So we built a product that replicated what he did. sensors on the feet, handheld device, headphones. Took it through 10 clinical trials, raised $60 million of venture capital in the state, got 2 FDA approvals, got a Medicare code, and showed that you can do innovation here. And I know we can do a lot more of it once we get the government out of the way.
Speaking of innovators, are we going to be able to get innovators into the state when we have a millionaire tax?
That is a big deterrent. I mean, if you look at I call it the income tax surcharge that has happened. And if you look at Massachusetts as a canary in the coal mine, they put the same plan into place. They lost $4.3 billion in net income that fled the state and left here. If we lose somewhere between 7 to 10% of people in that category, we are net negative on dollars for revenue into the state, even though the percentage went up. It's a bad deal for Maine. And the Press Herald tried to get me in a spot where they get me all tied up on this one. And they said, well, is that where you're only going to work on? Is this tax? I said, no, I want to get rid of all the income tax. So this is just part of one that's a problem. But yeah, it's not going to be good for recruiting people in that want to build companies and want to employ a lot of people. And along the way, want to have some wealth that's created for their family. They're going to go other places.
So is there anything in your plan for cutting the budget, scaling back expenses?
The state budget has grown from $7 billion to $12 billion the last 7 years, and arguably higher once we turn over the cards for when we take office, because there's some things that are required to be paid for that were passed that aren't in the budget. So that's $3 billion more than inflation. I don't know anyone out there in Maine, if you have, God bless you, but many Mainers have not increased their budget by that amount over the last 7 years. It's not sustainable. We're spending like drunken sailors almost, and we need to make cuts and get it back in line. The first thing in the plan it talks about is the Maine Performance Review, which is the audit of absolutely everything. And if it's not delivering ROI, we got to shut the programs down. 2 is, since I released the plan, it has been very apparent there's a lot of fraud going on in the state. The fraud is some of the explanation of how we've gone from $7 billion to $12 billion over the last 7 years. And the Maine Wire has found a lot of it by taking data they can find online, running it through some AI programs, identifying the top tier of potential companies that are committing the fraud and going and knocking on the doors. Well, if you're the governor, you have all the data. You have the same tools. You can more quickly find a larger chunk that are committing fraud, go knock on the doors, give the money back to the people. That's how I'm going to fund my 10% income tax cut immediately, is through the fraud, because it's huge out there. And then we have to put people in jail and prosecute them that have committed the crimes as deterrents. So there's a cut there. I also talk about a bridge program for Medicaid or for benefits. So right now, I talk to a lot of small businesses across this state. They tell me they have a lot of employees that want to work more, but they can't. They get up to 20 hours and they say, well, I lose my benefits if I make a little more. And that's just wrong. And we got to fly to DC, work with the Trump administration, get a waiver, because it's a federal program to how we design it. We got to set it up such that if they work a little more, they get 80% of the benefit. They work a little more, they get 60% of the benefit. Step them off of it. We save money in the state budget. We let people work and sort of have the honor of working and get ahead. And we help our healthcare system because we now have a larger mix that aren't on Medicaid, which paid 60 cents on the dollar. So those are some of the ways I think about cutting the spending. And then we flatline the budget for many years. So we allow a lot of the other lines of revenue to catch up and remove the income tax.
So if somebody wants to see this plan, where would they find it?
The plan is on the website, owenformaine.com/plan, or you can go and click on it. It's 70 pages, 130 policies. I have a 2-pager that I'm putting up this week. So if anyone wants the Cliff Notes version, that will be there also.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Karina Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a conversation with Maine Republican gubernatorial candidate, Owen McCarthy. What's your plan on education?
For me, education, as I look out, the largest problem I see is only 1 in 4 fourth graders can read at grade level right now. Right? If you can't read, you can't learn. It is the biggest inflection point in someone's life. And if you go to the current administration in Augusta and you ask them, I've asked the commissioner about this, like, what about the results? She will say, well, the results don't really matter. It's all these other things that matter. And it's confusing to me, and we need to solve it. And the beauty of the United States is that other places have solved problems and you can learn from them. Mississippi has gone from 49th to 9th in the country when it comes to fourth grade reading. If you adjust for socioeconomic status, they're first. And they did a few things. One is they said the outcomes did matter and they held their schools accountable to it. 2, and this is going to sound very common sense, but they passed a science of reading law, which still allows teachers to pick the curriculum that they want, but they are forced to pick from curriculum that's proven to work. So evidence-based curriculum. In Maine right now, If you go to the MEPRI report, which is a nonpartisan research institute, and look at 2 years ago, how many of the curriculum taught in elementary schools were evidence-based or proven to work, it was only 50%. So 50% of the curriculum is actually proven not to work. And then we wonder why the kids can't read. So we have to pass the science of reading law. There's a little funding for training there and a little funding for helping get curriculum, but it's not in the scale and scope of education funding. It is a rounding error, and it will get to the point where we can, within 3 years, make a change and make a leap in the test scores for the kids of Maine. And if you learn to read, you read to learn the rest of your life. And I think that's the hill to go take. And it's one that will make a lot of difference for a lot of people, no matter if they're in Presque Isle or Kittery or anywhere in between.
So I'm sure you're hearing out there on the campaign trail, people complaining about their energy cost.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. As I said in the opening, from both the businesses and the people. And this is self-inflicted wounds that we put on our electricity costs, specifically in the state of Maine. We grew the fastest in the country the last 7 years in electricity costs. It was double anywhere else last year. And if you break it down, the market, it's a $2.5 billion electricity market in the state of Maine. 250 million of that is solar subsidies. So that's 10%. And then there's another 200 million of extra fees for climate change related things that are put on the generators. Some of them come through the bill, but most of them are hidden from the people of Maine. They just get charged to the kilowatt and then they mark it up and they show up on the bill. So step one is any of these hidden fees, we need to pull them out of hidden and bring them into the budget in Augusta and bring them as low as possible, if not remove them as we can. And there's a 10 to 20% savings rate there if you do that. Then you need to attack the type of generation. If you think about where we're located in Maine, in the winter, solar doesn't really work. The angle of the sun doesn't hit it right. The snow is on top of it. But when you flip the switch, you want your lights to turn on. So you need what they call base layer energy. And solar's intermittent. So we need to make sure we're investing in base layer energy. The quickest way to make a difference for most of Maine, I know there's 2 grids in Maine, but the ISO New England part of the grid, so the CMP section, is to work again with the Trump administration and with Connecticut, Massachusetts, and expand the pipeline coming in for natural gas. The Algonquin pipeline, you could double or triple the diameter of the pipe in the same right of way. So it sounds like it would take a long time, but it's less long than a brand new pipe because you could use the same one, double the diameter of the pipe, bring more natural gas into the state of Maine. That would immediately lower costs. People have pushed back against this a few times. They said, well, Connecticut's not going to get on board and Massachusetts is not going to get on board. I think it's different now because A, we do have the Trump administration. They're willing to play ball with this. And there's some federal pressure that can be exerted. B, Connecticut consumers and businesses and Massachusetts consumers and businesses, they're not far behind us in this growth in electricity costs. It's a regional problem. I'm hearing even Maura Healey in Massachusetts as she's running for governor again. Maybe it's a campaign talking point. So we'll see if it comes true. Saying, well, I think we should look at natural gas coming into Massachusetts because everyone's getting killed. So we got to expand that. Where we can, we got to buy more hydro from Canada as we can do that. That's low cost. We got to buy it as base layer though, which means that we can have it when we really need it. Right now, the contracts we have is they have a certain amount to sell us over the year and they can pick when. And usually when they want to sell it to us is not when we actually need it. So we need to pay a little more for base layer. And long term, we got to look at small modular nuclear. Technology, when we shut nuclear down in the late 80s and early 90s, that was 30 plus years ago. Technology has changed a lot in everything that we do across the board. We need to give it another look. Though, for the people out there listening, this is a 5 or 10 year impact. It's not an overnight impact. It takes time. It's always going to be 5 or 10 years out if you don't get started.
What are your thoughts on AI data centers?
Someone asked me this last night in Auburn. I was at a GOP meeting there. And I said, look, there's deals that are good for Maine and there's deals that are bad for Maine. And if we go through all the areas where it could be good or bad, one of the biggest benefits for AI data centers coming into communities is they'll offset property taxes for the local areas and they'll pay. So you cannot give property tax breaks for them to come in. That is the largest benefit. So any deal that includes property tax breaks is a bad deal. They need to pay their fair share. 2 is, for better or for worse, our electricity environment that we just talked about in the state of Maine is so expensive that I think they're only going to come in when they can find behind the meter power or generate their own power. So with that as a lens, it won't impact consumers' electricity costs, in my opinion. I've heard from a project up north that is considering biomass as a way to power an AI data center. That would be great because we need markets for the low end wood. The one in J is looking at using some of the power that's already generated there off the grid. That's great. That's a good idea. If you go to the next layer of AI data centers, everyone talks about the water impacts. I think that in Maine, particularly, and the data centers are looking at coming here, that is overblown. And I say that because one, Maine is one of the only states that's increased the water in its aquifers. So we have a lot of water. Two is these are cooling towers. So think light industrial applications. Even though they bring in water, they just circulate it to cool these servers, and then they send it back out at probably a higher quality than they got it in, right? So it's still in the system. They don't use as much water as our beloved French fry plants in northern Maine. They don't use as much water as a paper mill. So they're kind of light industrial. So I think that's not a problem. So in summary, they're good as long as we don't give property tax breaks and they're not increasing everyone's electricity. But I don't think those will come to Maine anyways.
So let's pivot to DHHS. What is your plan?
Well, there's been 155 kids or more that have died under the care of the state in the last 7 years. One kid death is too many, and it needs to be solved immediately. In Maine 2040, in the plan, I think it's like page 58, actually. First thing we do is take the Office of Child Services and remove it out from DHHS. It's a separate entity, reports directly into a commissioner that reports to the governor. That commissioner, the first one that you hire to get it cleaned up, I call him like a wartime leader. They're like, take no prisoners, go out and like really figure out how to solve the problem in an aggressive way. And they're held accountable to making sure that no more kids die under the care of the state. Likely that looks like them spending a lot of time on the ground because as I've dug into this problem, the agency has layers of bureaucracy that kill the ability for the people that are actually working with the families to use all the tools they have to keep kids safe. So they're going to spend a lot of time there. They'll be reporting directly to the governor. Two is got to make sure that with the people on the ground, which means that we need to get rid of some of the bureaucracy to fund this, that they have the right caseloads set up. Right now, they have too many kids to keep an eye on and not enough people to do it. So we got to lower the caseloads and give additional training. The other thing to do is the rules and regulations related to the foster care side of it keep really good people out from wanting to be foster parents. I was talking to someone over in the Dover region recently who said that they had been a foster parent for a long time. And they said they came across this young boy, was in a tough situation, and they wanted to help out, and they were going to foster. And they called the agency, no one answered. They called again, no one answered. They drove to the office and they said, well, you need to go to the other office. They then drove to the other office and they said, well, your certification expired 6 months ago. And the guy's like, look, I'm taking the kid. Just figure out how to do this. We've done this so many times. It's either this or put him in a hotel with two random people. We're going to take care of the kid. They eventually figured it out after a full day work to try to make this happen. Then they tell me this journey they go on for training for all summer, 2 hours once a week with a bunch of stuff that's kind of irrelevant to being a foster parent. So there's a lot of rules and regulations there to clean up, to make sure that people that are good people want to help out in the system. And there's so much to do, but I think starting with making it its own entity and keeping a close eye on it, it will make a big difference for making sure we keep kids safe in the care of the state.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Karina Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a conversation with Maine Republican gubernatorial candidate, Owen McCarthy.
So what's your plans to keep hospitals alive here in the state of Maine since we've had so many closing?
You know, if you go to my hometown of Patton, Maine right now, you have to drive an hour and a half to have a baby. An hour and a half. And I've talked to some of the people in the EMS services. There has been babies delivered in the ambulance since the closures have happened because Holton closed and Millinocket closed. So access to healthcare is a major problem. So let me start with general access to healthcare, and I'll talk about rural hospitals. For the OB problem, we're going to use the Rural Health Transformation Funds and make sure that we rebuild the OB units because no families are moving into those areas unless we do that. Two is for the instances where people can get services via telemedicine. We're going to open that up a much wider berth and allow reciprocity for clinicians that aren't in state to come in when we don't have them. And I say that because right now, a lot of people use the emergency room as their primary care doctor for basic things because they don't have access to anyone. And so if we can do it via telemedicine where they are, right place, right time, that opens up the emergency room for actually emergencies that they can get paid more to do that at the emergency. It's a win-win. Then we need to solve EMS in this state. Right now, in some towns, you call 911, the ambulance doesn't show up. So that's a problem, right? That's a fundamental part of society. So solve that, and where we can, train people in community paramedicine. I've talked about that. And then for the rural critical access hospitals, there's a couple of models I've studied where you can go there to see, say, a primary care or a PA or an NP about a specialized care. So think cancer. Have them bring into the room with you via telemedicine the oncologist. What you need to do is you need to allow that hospital to bill to bring in the oncologist, so they get a little money for that. But it's a win-win because they can get a little money for the visit. The person doesn't have to drive an hour and a half to get cancer care, which sometimes they don't do. I've heard stories about that. You can get more money into the rural hospitals. You can get better outcomes. And then maybe they go to the cancer treatment once a month instead of 3 times a week. And it's a win-win all around. So you can bring more money into those communities. And then finally, I think I talked about this at the beginning, the mix of payers is really hurting us right now. Medicaid pays 60, 70 cents on the dollar. 440,000 Mainers are on Medicaid. Medicare pays 80, 90 cents on the dollar. But if you think about that, every one of those encounters for hospitals, they're losing money, or providers. So then they look at the people that are working, that have commercial insurance, like you all. Then you have businesses, and they say, well, I need to make up my profit or break even on this care. So they say, well, I got to keep raising those rates. So it's almost a hidden tax on businesses as we expand these other programs. So making sure that you change the mix, so you have, instead of, say, 20% of the population on commercial insurance, which I got to fact check that number, grow that to 30%. Now you can spread out the burden of keeping the hospitals alive amongst more. It will lower healthcare costs overall and make it so they're less likely to get hurt. The last one is the state doesn't pay on time for things. And if you have 440,000 Mainers on Maine Care, and that's a large makeup of these hospitals, and then you decide to pass a majority budget and don't pay a quarter worth of care until 90 days later, you're putting a big strain on those places that have 7 to 10 days of cash right now. So those are some of the things to do to make sure our healthcare system stays alive.
So in your big plan book, do you have anything there about the homeless?
Yeah, it is in the criminal justice section of the book. And just an observation, it seems to have gotten a lot worse, particularly in Portland, Lewiston, and Bangor over the last 7 years. I think we need to take a little more of a tough love approach to this, of how we think about the homeless problem, because there's a lot of Mainers that do want to help people that down or out. But the way we've done it hasn't been to get people out of the scenario they're in. It's to basically keep them there maybe more comfortably for a longer time. So some things that we talk about to address it, and it's a multifactorial problem. So there's a lot of things to do. One is for the people that are homeless because of drug addiction, instead of handing out 100 to 1 needles, we talk more about focusing on recovering people. If you recover people, that's good for lowering the demand for drugs in the area, and you get them their lives back. And I've talked a lot about on the trail how my best friend from high school was a drug addict for many years. And he ended up at the Arise program that Calvary Chapel has down in Machias. And it's a faith-based recovery program. And he has been clean for 2.5 years, is studying to be a minister. And it's amazing. Like, I have my friend back now. And
That's great.
It's so amazing. So I think instead of handing out more needles, we need to think about recovering people, and we need to think outside the box about the programs that work for that. 2 is, I've talked to some people both on the jail side and in the legal side about this problem. And they talk about cashless bail being a real issue. Because as soon as you get arrested, you can get out in the street before the cops even write up the report. So then the cops are disenfranchised. And if someone is homeless because of a mental health issue, you can't even hold them to get help for them. So I think that that's a real problem. We need to change that. I talked to one of the county sheriffs, and they said, oh, and our jails have become the mental health institutions of the state. And a big fix would be, and this isn't in the plan because we got to get a V2 out there, but let's think about bringing back some of these severe mental health institutions. So instead of using the jails as that, get people the care they need, where they're at, so we can make sure that we get them the care they need. And some people might say, well, that might be inhumane to kind of lock them up in these places and get care. And I just say, my goal is to try to get people better and recover them. And sometimes that includes this tough love approach. And there's many things to do. I also heard today, and I haven't fact checked this either, but the housing vouchers that they hand out, They give them out to the most severe that probably should be in one of these severe mental health institutions versus the ones that were just down on their luck. And, if you nudge them, they could get back on their feet. We need to relook at that program. There's a lot to do, but it needs to be all in the spirit of how do we get someone back into a functional place in society. You're not going to fully eradicate it, but you can continue to make progress on it. I think right now, some places are spending tens of millions of dollars, tens to 100,000s per homeless person. There's got to be better ways to use those resources to solve the problem.
Before we let you go, Election Day is coming right up. People have voted, but for those that have not voted yet, or maybe they are undecided, waiting for Election Day, why should those voters vote for you?
I'm excited about Election Day. Many Mainers do vote on Election Day. I've said that I'm like the golden tempo of this race. We've been passing people as we've been getting closer and closer. And the why me pitch, I come in this race. I'm an engineer. I'm an entrepreneur. I focus on solving the problems. I'm also someone that grew up north of Augusta. I'm the only one in this race that has any roots north of Augusta. I've also been deeply embedded in the business community for many years here. I released the plan that I talked about because I wanted to make sure if I asked for your vote, which I am, that you can hold me accountable to what I want to do. I've worked in our heritage industries of pulp and paper, I'm engineer in there. My dad was a logger. I know what's coming in the future. I built a technology company. There's a lot going on with AI. We can't get left behind like last time. I can talk to you about sawmills or software. And my mission is just make sure we build Maine as more than vacation land for wealthy people. And I think if that resonates with you, vote for me on June 9th.
Maine Republican gubernatorial candidate Owen McCarthy. So good to see you again.
I'm happy to be back. I'll come back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Q Point.
Follow us at qpointpodcast.com or in your favorite streaming app.
This is where you can get the news from the people who make the news.
Make sure to join us next time.
We hope you tune in.
Q Point Podcast invites guests and candidates from all parties to join the conversation. The views, information, opinions, and comments expressed during this program do not necessarily represent those of the host, Q Point Podcast, associates, affiliates, and CQRE LLC.
Thanks for being a part of the conversation. The most important voices aren't always the loudest ones. They're the voices of everyday people, raising families, running businesses, serving their towns. That's who we want to hear from. Share your ideas with us online, and let's make sure those voices are never left out. Find us on Facebook or on X or at qpointpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Catch every episode at qpointpodcast.com or wherever you stream. Tune in and tell your friends.